Okay. Good morning. Thank you for joining our webinar this morning. You have joined the North Carolina Remote Learning Resources and Information webinar. There is a bit.ly to access our slides today. You see that in the top right corner. bit.ly/NC remote, R-E-M-O-T-E, learning, L-E-A-R-N-I-N-G. Okay, so we're going to do a little housekeeping while we're waiting for the additional folks that would like to join us to join. But those of you that are in the webinar, if you look at your webinar panel, you want to make sure you can hear us today. You should have a hand located in your webinar panel. Please raise your hand if you can hear our voice. Okay, we have hands going up. You can stop raising hands and I will put them down. All right, if you can see our screen and it says webinar housekeeping, please raise your hand again. Okay, that looks very good. I'm going to put your hands down. Some additional information. If you have questions during our webinar, please ask them in the questions panel in the webinar panel. We will be recording those and then returning a frequently asked questions document after the webinar has completed. If there are any handouts, which I don't think we have any today, there is a handout section. The chat section, if you're having difficulties with sound or viewing, you can raise your hand and I will send you a chat to determine if we can assist. And again, put your questions not in the chat, but in the questions panel. There is a little video or a little screenshot down there below. If you are having those audio issues, please check on the audio panel, check and switch from computer to phone call, or do the little drop down below for a sound check, or change your microphone for your speaker settings. And with that, I will turn it over to our Superintendent, Mark Johnson.
Speaking here. Thank you. This is State Superintendent Mark Johnson, and I want to thank everyone for taking time out of their day. I want to thank the dedicated staff at the Department of Public Instruction for working very quickly to put this together and for making it available for so many people across the state. My message to local superintendents and central office staff and all educators, this is a truly unprecedented, trying time for schools and for North Carolina and for our nation. And I want to thank you for your leadership during this rapidly evolving situation. But we are working very closely with the governor's office, and the governor's office and the Department of Health and Human Services still is advising against preemptive school closings. We are emphasizing to follow that guidance if and until it changes. We can move to these strategies. But with that, we want you to know that the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction will support you in whatever decision you have to make that is best for your students and teachers. Continue working with your local health departments. Work closely with them and work with their guidance. And if we get to a point where we need to close a school or schools, again, do what is in the best interest of your students and teachers. Just like with the hurricanes, let us worry about the legislative concerns that will come after this situation. We will help you keep track of the impacts, and we can go and work for the legislative changes and financial support that we need to address this situation. Right now in this webinar, we're making sure that we are proactively helping you with remote learning options. We are separately working on nutritional needs and suggestions that will follow if we have to close schools. I will let you know that under my leadership, you probably are already familiar that I am willing to push the limits in order to do what is best for students and teachers. We already have looked into using the yellow school buses to continue their routes and deliver meals. We are also looking into how certain schools can stay open for nutrition needs and be drive-through meal pickup locations. And importantly, superintendents. At 3 o'clock today, there is a call for superintendents with the governor's office and staff from the Health and Human Services Department that will answer more of your questions along the lines of if and when this reaches a point where preemptive school closing will be recommended by those officials. Again, I want to thank you all for your leadership, but we know how important your leadership is for your communities, and we want you to know that we are here to support you in whatever you need. So with that, I want to thank the Department of Public Instruction staff who has worked tirelessly to put these resources together. This is not the end all of this conversation. There will be more follow-up. And of course, again, I emphasize the superintendents. Utilize the new district and regional support structure at the Department of Public Instruction. Your regional case managers are there for any question you have to direct it to the right point person at the Department of Public Instruction. So thank you. And with that, I will turn it over to our team. I'll turn it over to Dr. David Stegall, who will get this underway.
Thank you, Superintendent Johnson. Superintendents, I know a lot of you are on the call here today. We appreciate your leadership. We know there's a lot of uncertainty, as Superintendent Johnson shared, and there's rapid change happening. So we appreciate you being so responsive. The main purpose of today is that we hope today assist you and your staff, in particular your CTO staff, to mobilize and plan with existing and readily available resources should remote learning programs be utilized. Again, these are ever-changing, but the purpose of today is to provide support for you, share ideas, share resources, and make proactive plans as we move forward. If you have specific questions, please feel free to reach out to Dr. Emery or myself or Mr. Johnson if there's specific questions for superintendents, and we'll continue to provide that support. I'll turn it over to Dr. Emery to give a little more quick update.
Thank you, David, and I appreciate the comments, Superintendent Johnson. I just want to echo, I think folks are indicating they're feeling maybe a little alone out there, and just want to reiterate that this is uncharted water. None of us have been through this type of thing before. We want to make the best decisions possible, and also want to be sure you know that whether it's just to vent or you have a specific issue, many of you have been raising issues for us that help us know what the needs are and what to address. I want to also echo, please use your regional case manager. They have 24/7 access to us, and they are your boots on the ground to advocate for your needs. I'm pleased to turn this over to two of my division directors, and I just also want to thank them, Dr. Liz Colbert and Dr. Vanessa Wren and their team for the quick hustle this week in pulling this together. And so at this time, I'm turning it over to Dr. Colbert to talk about options with North Carolina Virtual Public Schools.
Thank you, Dr. Emery. This is Liz Colbert with North Carolina Virtual, and North Carolina Virtual is the state's supplemental online program, and we have an option for you and a potential solution for you depending on what you believe that your needs are. So NC Virtual is willing to enroll transfer students in grades 9 through 12 who into our courses. Now, a transfer student is a student who is in the course with you in a face-to-face, or a student who moves into the area, but a student who has knowledge already in the content, has been working through the course. A transfer student is not brand new to the course. So if you have students involved, for example, in biology, and then school closes, those biology students are the perfect student to transfer into NC Virtual. These enrollments will not count toward the district's instructional projection for 2021, and thus not reducing your classroom teacher allotment for the next budget year. If schools are closed for a short amount of time, for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, the NC virtual teacher will continue to work with the district teacher in a co-teaching capacity, and the schools will have access to our course for the remainder of the academic year. Of course, if your school is closed for the rest of the semester, the NC virtual teacher will handle it as the lead teacher. So this is not a limitless opportunity. We're going to enroll as many students as we can. So we want you to think internally about some priority considerations, students who are in tested courses, graduating seniors who may need this or that, courses that are hard to staff even in a normal situation, and then make some decisions. So on the next slide, you'll see how to do this. This is a picture of our website, www.ncvps.org, and that is the top banner. So if you just click that banner, you will be taken to a worksheet, if you will, to fill out and put in the information, your needs, ask questions, etc. And we have staff ready to respond as soon as you need us. So NCVPS, this is an option, and this may be a solution for you to consider. So let us know if you have any questions. And now I'll turn the mic over to Dr. Wren.
Dr. Coburn. With me today is Dr. Mark Sandberg from the Friday Institute. I'm going to let Mark introduce himself.
Good morning. My name is Mark Sandberg with the Friday Institute, Director of Technology Programs, and we're happy to be here today to work with DPI to support them in this effort.
And I am Vanessa Wren. I'm the Director of Digital Teaching and Learning. And we wanted to speak to you today. We reached out to CTOs, Directors of Technology, Directors of Media, because we understand that in your situation, you're being tasked to pull together many resources quickly as you consider remote learning, as you look at what all your options are. So our purpose today is to kind of share thoughts with you, help you leverage your resources, and collaborate to give you support throughout your district. So we're going to start off today with some experiences from the field, and then we'll look at connectivity options. We'll move straight into mobile devices and pedagogy.
So we'll start off with some resources for leadership, for CTOs and tech directors. The first thing we're going to do is we have some field experiences that we want to share with you. So these are school districts and charter schools that are doing remote learning experiences already. So the first one that we would like to share with you is Dr. Andrew Harris, who is the CEO of Northeast Academy of Aerospace and Advanced Technologies. That is a charter school located in Elizabeth City. And he's going to share a little bit with you about their remote learning protocol and the work that they've done in their school. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Harris.
Hi there, are we live? Looks like
Yeah.
We have some audio connectivity. Okay. All right, we have a presentation that we prepared that we're happy to share. Can we be allowed to share that?
Yes.
Yes. Andrew.
In the meantime, I'll just share a little bit of background information. We began development of a remote learning environment about 5 years ago. We've been continuously refining that process since that time. We have about 580 students from 9 counties in the Northeast, Title I school, about 85% connectivity, and we're a one-to-one shop with Chromebooks. The way we have developed our remote learning protocol is that each day we run a protocol. Students log in by, oh, here we go. All right, so students log in by, the protocols are released at 8:30 each day. We do a remote learning day, and students log in by 9 o'clock. That does remain a little bit flexible due to connectivity issues we have, but we take attendance through various forms. We have activity logs through our LMS, Canvas. Students turn in all their assignments that way or through alternative measures. And I have with me today Ms. Karen Williams. She's our Director of Teaching and Learning, and I'll allow her to share a little bit with you, and then I'll come back for sort of a broad overview.
So if you can follow along on our slide here, it's really important for our remote learning protocol to focus on the protocol. We have a high rate of success with our remote learning because we do have these things outlined for our kids, and we do practice it in an in-house RLP for our students. Like Dr. Harris said, our attendance is flexible. We have some students that complete their assignments before midnight. We have some students, the majority of them are logging in at 9 a.m. and we're checking behind that. And our coaches on staff are actively holding office hours. So for a starting point protocol, it's going to be imperative for this to be successful for your teachers. We do operate through Canvas. This is a typical screen where they would go to in and log in. They would click, do their attendance, and then the protocol that you see under number 3 is a checklist, basically, so to make sure none of our students are missing out on any of our classes. The next is high priority for us is our EC services. We work very closely with our EC services to make sure we co-plan and co-teach. Our EC students include community sites, group check-ins, and they contact our EC students one-on-one. This is evolving. We just met yesterday, and we're going over our protocols again if we have an extended RLP.
And so some of the things that we've already developed as sort of enhancements, additions, adjustments to our remote learning protocol procedures are listed here on the slide. One concern that has been brought up to us and schools and districts that have reached out to us for a little bit of guidance is what do we do with, support personnel who may be faced with no income. For us, it really comes down to what are we going to do with all this overtime. We intend to run bus couriers to take resources to and from our students and their communities, offer technical assistance, to offer Wi-Fi access. We intend to implement, should it become necessary, a true blended model whereby we'll have face-to-face check-ins with students, times that our teachers are available at community sites. And so we're basically going to bring school to them versus them coming to us on a daily basis. We've been able to contact our community partners, and we're running flexible calendars, flexible daily schedules. We're contacting local resources for food delivery, and for sort of our internal processes, every day we're looking at, we normally do a morning huddle that's school-wide, and so we want to continue that process, look at daily reflections on what's working and not, and sort of enhance what we're offering from there. If you are about to get started in something like this, again, we've been sort of on this pathway for about 5 years. We do have high attendance rates. We do have high success rates. In fact, often our attendance on RLP days is actually a little bit better than our 1 or 2 hour delay days. So we're proud of that. But I would definitely consider developing a community asset map in the digital teaching and learning world. We tend to think about that as being where Wi-Fi is available. And what's also important would be where we can go to meet with students and parents face-to-face for a little bit of additional time as well. We talk about policies like internal attendance policies. Ours is shaped so that we can address how we would make up in an RLP environment. One of the big things that when we shifted to RLP on a regular basis was a lot of times educators think that because students are home, they have to assign tons of work. So really spending some time around what a reasonable workload is, what reasonable accommodations are for students. Disciplinary issues still arise, sometimes a little bit different in the RLP day versus a traditional day. So spending a little bit of time on that is important. But you see here the list of sort of key points to consider. One of the things that we do, and we do often, is to actually practice this during the school day, during the regular school day, to troubleshoot any issues and improve process.
So major instructional considerations for us is to develop a common protocol, both paper and with our LMS. If you're using Canvas, we've listed some key components here that I would pay special attention to when doing PD with your staff or PD with your kids when they're doing that in-house. It would be the calendar, conferences, making sure Google Suite's integrated before they go home and try it out. We did create a digital crosswalk. So we asked and ran a column in a spreadsheet of all the teaching strategies that would be face-to-face, and then we linked all the digital teaching strategies that we would use to make that would happen on a remote setting. Convert regular lessons to RLP lessons. Once you have that toolkit in that crosswalk, the teachers then start using that toolkit and converting those lesson plans. Once again, consider time on task, realistic office hours. A lot of our coaches run office hours at night, some in the morning, some, they take a break at lunch and then they run afternoon sessions and night sessions. I would highly recommend one-stop shopping. If you have never done any remote learning protocols, if you could put your lesson into a Google Slide or a HyperDoc, that would help out kids that are not LMS proficient. And then practice. All of our coaches recommended yesterday, we asked them if they had to tell a school system, for their first time what to do. Practice was their #1 recommendation.
And so, along with that too, we survey students and parents each day based on each day's protocol to try to continuously improve our processes to make sure we are meeting the needs of every student. And one of the key takeaways we have most recently come across is we often do Wi-Fi surveys to find out who has internet access at home. But students, particularly students in grades 6 and lower, may not be able to connect from home during the regular school day because they'll be at a family member's home or at their parents' place of work. So one of the things we have now done is to go back to our families, our students, parents, to ask if we have RLP in the morning, would you have access? In the afternoon, would you have access? So we're sort of building out an additional layer or secondary tier around connectivity for our students so that we can really try to get as many students connected as possible. Just as a closing item here, we've got a few parent comments. Over the years, this has become a really popular way to approach teaching and learning at our school. Sometimes we run this during the regular school day, not just to practice, but as a way to really flexibly use personnel to best meet students' needs, sort of small groups and breakout groups. And so it extends well beyond crises or weather, inclement weather scenarios like we tend to face. We're happy to share any of our resources. Next Wednesday, we're going to be running an in-school RLP. Some districts have asked if they can observe. If we have slots available, please reach out. We'd be glad to do what we can. If anyone wants any of the resources we have, we're here to help, and just appreciate your time today and look forward to learning even more.
Thank you.
So thank you for that. That was one example of a school that's using this for core instruction. But we understand that for most of us, we're going to be looking at supplemental activities. The overarching point here is the social and emotional well-being of our children and their safety. So we're thankful to have experience in the field who's already doing this around core instruction. But as we look through these uncertain times, we know that we're going to be looking at many things with supplemental instruction. Very, very briefly, we're going to hear from Chris Whitlock, who is the CTO in Transylvania schools, and they have done some things with remote learning that does not require digital access, and some that does require that. And then we're going to jump right into CTO Checklist. So without further ado, we're going to turn this very fast over to Chris Whitlock, and he's going to share very quickly what they do in Transylvania County.
Thank you, Dr. Wren. Chris Whitlock, Transylvania County Schools. We have virtual days that we have coined. We started with virtual days in the 2015-2016 school year, and this was a way that we have worked through inclement weather in the past. And kind of give you a little background of our district, we are one-to-one with Chromebooks. Grades 6 through 12 go home with them every night. Lower grades have Chromebook carts in the room, but those devices do not go home. We have piloted with some third, fourth, and fifth grade at one of our elementary schools with taking Chromebooks home and working through that virtual day process with them, but we haven't gone to a full-blown model yet in our elementary schools. We're a Google shop, so all of our content and course delivery is via Google Classroom, and our students are accustomed to that. That's the norm, kind of in classroom daily and for virtual days. So specifically in grades 6 through 12, where those devices are going home, the content that is delivered in the Google Classroom for those middle and high school students is pertinent. It should be right on track with the current flow of the course of wherever that student is in the course. We do very much have to consider connectivity as well. So Google Docs offline mode as we prepare for the possibility to have a school closing for inclement weather or whatever the situation may be. We do encourage and walk through that process with our students to make those resources available offline if need be. So that's kind of how we have combated that particular issue. As far as the amount of work, the things that Dr. Harris was saying there, we are very similar in many aspects to what we have found there. So we aim for approximately 4 hours of work. And we derive that from, if we were going to make a day up for inclement weather on a Saturday, it would be a half day. And we realize that some students will obviously take more than 4 hours, some less than 4 hours, but we are looking for content that would last approximately 4 hours. Furthermore, there we know we're going to have students who need additional help. Our teachers are available via email, and most of the time we communicate via either Google Classroom or via email back and forth with our middle and high school kids. We kind of expect our teachers to have office hours, I guess, if you will, around those times, so we can specifically have some interaction and whatnot if needed during those times.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Chris. We appreciate you sharing some ideas from the field of what's going on. So we're going to quickly then go into a CTO checklist. And I know as I talked to many of you last night, you're thinking about how can I prepare my district? What do I need to be thinking about? So Mark, will you go through that, please?
Yeah, so this is certainly by no means an all-inclusive checklist. Every time we go through it, we find something new to add. But this is a list of things that if you're going to be preparing to deliver remote instruction, things that you would want to think about. The first one is establishing systems to maintain and complete an accurate inventory, such that if you're not used to sending devices home, that you have systems in place to be able to track that when devices do start going home. Same thing with your filter settings. So there may be some websites that you need to change filter settings for, or that you may have to change your devices to be filtered from home if they're not traditionally devices that go home. The next thing you'll need to think about is how you're going to support your teachers and students when they run into technical issues. So is that a remote support? How you're going to get replacement devices out to students and teachers if the device itself malfunctions. Thinking about policies, if you don't have a one-to-one program already, there will be some policies that you'll need to put in place to accommodate that. Telling your parents and making sure your parents know how to access the learning management system and what logins and passwords they'll need to access the materials that students are using. Sharing your teacher and staff email and phone, so not just your teachers, but the whole cadre of staff that a student or a parent may need access to. So sharing the relevant email addresses for those people or for phone numbers. If you don't have a phone system that can be forwarded, using Google Voice numbers or Skype numbers to allow people to still communicate with parents and school staff. Same thing along the lines of telephones. If your telephone system can be forwarded, forwarding voicemails to email such that a teacher or a staff member can get emails remotely as well. If teachers are going to be distributing synchronous instruction, making sure that the webcam and the microphone that they're going to be using is a high enough quality to provide a high quality experience. And then also that you're enabling remote monitoring of your district hosted systems so that if you as a CTO or your staff are remote, that you can monitor if a server goes down, but also putting in systems for your facilities folks so that they can monitor things like HVACs and freezers so that if they need to come in and repair equipment, they can. Making sure that if your acceptable use policies need to be adapted for chat and video and email functionality, some district AUPs don't allow for that, and you may have to revisit that in light of this. If you issue hotspots or you have data with you have apps with bandwidth limitations, making sure that you know what those are and that you're aware of what capacity needs to be augmented for this. Same thing is reviewing policies for how teachers and students communicate. Many districts have those policies, so you may need to review that to be flexible in these times while also protecting your students and your staff. The next one is establishing norms and support models for teacher coaching and pedagogy. So how is it that you're going to support your teachers through this process and coach them as they're transforming instruction and instructional delivery to a remote environment? Reviewing system settings and making sure that everything on the different apps that your school uses is set up for remote instruction, and then being responsive if you forget things or if there are things that come up that you were not anticipating. Making sure that if you need to be sending assistive and adaptive devices home with students, that you have some way to do that, and that also that the remote instruction that you're delivering accounts for students' IEP needs, 504 plans, ESL, et cetera. Establishing norms to address systems failures and capacity issues. Some of these systems have never been tested at the scale that we're about to test them. So we need to make sure that we know how we're going to tell people what to do if systems can't handle the capacity that's about to be thrown at them. Along the same lines as create a communications plan, how you're going to get word out to parents beyond just email and phone, right? So how you're going to communicate with your local radio, your local television, and where parents can go for information. This is an important one, is not let your guard down, right? So there's going to be a lot of information coming at teachers and at administrators and at staff very, very quickly. And that could leave your district open to phishing attacks and other forms of malware that you might not otherwise have caught. So you need to be aware of that and stay vigilant with respect to cybersecurity in light of all of these changes. And the last thing that you need to think about on this list is how your support staff are working remotely. In many schools, your support staff are primarily on desktops. So if they're not in the building, how are they going to be able to get to the system to process payroll and financials and handle administrative tasks?
Okay. So in order to further support you as you think about providing supplemental instruction while you might be away from school, we have built out a North Carolina Remote Learning Resources website. This website has checklists, sample policies, so if you have carts in classrooms and you'll be dismantling those to provide for take home for staff or take home for students, some policies that you can look at and adapt for your usage. There's also a spot here for pedagogical resources as you take your teachers and things that they can do online and offline. Again, our overarching goal is to support our families and make sure that they have well-being, and sometimes a sense of connectedness to the school community is valuable. And so there are resources here to help you work through those. Also, at the end of this webinar, we'll take your questions that you've put in the question pane, and we'll compile those and create an FAQ sheet. And once we get all those answers, we'll start posting those up here on this website as well. And Please know this is a work in progress. We are building this out. We're adding more things here, but there's plenty of things here for you to go to and get started and reference. We've also put together a list of links that you can use to get updates on the health crisis. As you all have seen on our listserv, there's many fake sites out there with fake maps of positive tests, and we wanted to make sure that you had the links to the authentic resources. So we have those here for you as well.
So one of the biggest challenges when shifting instruction to online environments is how we're supporting both the equity within our schools and the emotional needs of all of our staff and students. So I think the first thing that we need to remember as we go through this, and we're throwing a lot at you, and to remember that this actually is a lot, right? There's a lot going on. We need to remember the needs of our teachers and our students, the home situations going on, the families that we're serving, the anxiety around this situation, and external factors. So flexibility and adaptability is going to be a key as we transition to online learning environments. The next thing is to limit the number of new tools that we're introducing, right? We don't want to bombard teachers with shifting instruction online and also introducing 20 or 30 new tools. So we need to be strategic about what we're doing.
And I will add there that many vendors are emailing teachers directly right now with free resources and things that are there. So I encourage you, as the Director of CTO, Technology and Media, have conversations with your entire team. Meet with your curriculum directors, your superintendents, and go ahead and talk about what tools that you can use, what tools that you can support down the road. We all know what free is. Free sometimes is like free as a puppy. And so you need to think through that. If you switch through some of these things and you start using them, can you get lessons and data out of that later on if you do switch to those things? So we're going to show you lots of resources, but the most important thing is get aligned with your leadership staff. Think through what you want folks to have access to. And I truly caution you as you throw new stuff out there, be careful. Teachers are feeling stressed too, and they've got to change their way of communicating. And so going slow is sometimes the better way to make gains.
And then also remembering that parent education and explaining to parents what you're going to be doing and how is going to be a critical component of a successful remote learning program. It's also important to remember that not only students may not have consistent access to internet or digital devices, but some of your teachers and some of your school staff may also not have access to the internet at home. So that is a thing you need to consider when you're doing remote instruction. Also, being at home is distracting. Especially when a whole family is at home, there may be distractions that we need to consider that may become barriers to instruction. When you're designing instruction, providing equitable opportunities for students with special needs, for students with unreliable connectivity, and then also remembering how we're supporting students with unstable home situations. And as CTOs, as district leaders, you're going to need to support teachers in helping them to understand those needs of each of the students in their classrooms. Next thing is to comply with the student's individual education needs. When you're looking at new apps and when you're looking at new services, and especially in light of this situation which concerns student health, is maintaining student data privacy and maintaining student data confidentiality, and making sure that teachers understand what they are and are not allowed to share. Supporting the establishment of structure, so to the extent possible in uncertain times, creating a sense of structure and routine. So using some generic activities that are go-tos that students can be consistently working on, and then using calendar and office hours where possible. And some potential options that we've outlined to support this is open office hours at schools and small groups as is deemed prudent by your local health department and the governor's task force. As Superintendent Johnson alluded to earlier, the possibility of using the yellow buses to deliver meals. Creating a help desk for not just instructional services, but logistical services, and having one-stop shopping for families where they can. moving videos to flash drives and resources to flash drives, providing paper copies, et cetera. And then also potentially revisiting the role of snail mail and how we get information to and from school using traditional postal services.
So one thing that we want to be very mindful of is accessibility considerations. You know, universal design for learning is very important, but we've also got to think about service delivery for our EC students, including self-contained classes and related services. So we need to kind of think about this as supplemental teaching happens, making sure that we are cognizant of everyone's needs and equitableness. We don't want to punish students because they don't have access, and making sure that we are providing leadership for our teachers on how they can adapt. Some logistics and pedagogy things to consider are chunking tasks to allow students to limit their time on a single task, creating guidelines and identifying those deliverables. Students need expectations and checklists that they can refer to just like we do as adults, and that kind of makes it easy for them to follow. We always say the Hansel and Gretel approach is the best. Give them many, many breadcrumbs so they don't get lost when they're working remotely. And so you got to think about all of the directions that you will need to provide. And consider habit tracking apps to encourage students to focus and monitor on their time on task.
And then with respect to content, making sure that the content that you're selecting has screen reader and digital accessibility, making sure that the videos you're using are captioned, that students can navigate documents in accessible ways, including some non-digital activities that students can go to, and then using tools like Grackle Docs, the Word Accessibility Checker, and the Canvas Accessibility Checker to ensure that the content being distributed is accessible. And then also remember ensuring that teachers and students are aware of the read aloud and the voice dictation tools that are in apps like Word and Google Docs, so that they can allow students to have content read to them if they need it, or they can voice the text if they need it as well.
So we've outlined many, many things here, but there's a big thing that we have to consider, and that's our connectivity options. So we're going to go through some things with service options and non-internet options, and then offline options. As we have said all along, we have students in our state that can't have connectivity because of their ruralness or their socioeconomic conditions, or where they might be during the daytime might prevent that. So we want to kind of go through some things here that talks about some connectivity options that are available. And one of the first things that we want to make you aware of is the opportunity for bus hotspots. If you have your buses with connectivity, consider how you can make those hotspots and park those around your community to expand access during the school day.
So then also looking at some of the options for public school units to provide hotspots. So Kajit is a provider that you can purchase hotspots for students from, as our Mobile Citizen and Mobile Beacon. The North Carolina Department of Information Technology has a state contract 915A, where they've secured favorable pricing for hotspots from the 5 major providers that can be used for administrators and staff. Looking around your school, looking at parking lot Wi-Fi and how you control both group sizes, but then also make that Wi-Fi available. And then think about doing staggered open hours in school libraries to allow small groups of students to come in and use the services within a school library. Looking at your external partnerships, so where students can go to get internet and public Wi-Fi as well.
So consider your parking lots and around your schools, how you can make those public Wi-Fis, still maintaining the less than 100 gathered, make sure you have space between people, but turning up the Wi-Fi connectivity in your parking lots will be a helpful consideration right now. One of the things that's a good time to remind your parents of is there are many free and reduced programs to get access to high-speed internet in the home. We have linked these on the website, but all of the major providers will give free to no cost connections to your students who are on free and reduced lunch. Also, the $1 Million Project is something that I know many of you work with. As a result of $1 Million Project, we have 67,000 hotspots across the state that are already distributed. Many of you are working to pull in more hotspots, and as you do that, remind your parents about the filtering and how to access those and use those in the home.
So then some non-internet options. So some of the internet tools that we use for synchronous meetings, Hangouts, Meet, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, have call-in options that students can, even if they don't have internet access, if they have access to a phone, they can call in and join that conversation. Using tools like freeconferencecall.com also for all students to be able to dial in, and then tools like Google Voice to allow teachers to have a telephone number that students can call to reach that teacher. Google Voice is also an option for texting, as is Remind 101. The other way to get things out is through your local TV and radio stations. Many of them are willing to partner with districts to get information out there or to let different groups on the air to share information as they need to.
And of course, your offline options. Do not, there's a lot of power in a piece of a folder paper with contact and suggestions for parents to do at home. So you don't need to be very sophisticated to put together some very engaging activities that does not require connectivity. If you are going to use the Google Drive, make sure you set that for offline access and make videos available on flash drives or download those things. And again, you want to be very mindful of the pressure that might be on parents who do not have connectivity, and we want to make sure that we are addressing them and providing them with equal options.
So we're going to move into instructional resources and resources for teaching and learning. So we're going to start off by hearing from the field. So as many of you know, the UNC system is closing next week to transition to online learning. And so one of the things that we thought would be helpful is to have Bethany Smith from the North Carolina State University Distance Learning Delta group to share a little bit about the work that they've been doing to get their faculty ready and some of their lessons learned, in the hopes that it would be useful for us in K-12 as well if we have to go this route. So I'm going to turn it over to Bethany. And
thanks, Mark. Everybody can hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, great. So thanks for having me today. As Mark said, my name is Bethany Smith, and I'm with NC State, and we have been working with faculty to help transition their courses into online. I think the first thing that we've taken into account was we were in a planning stage. We created course continuity plans. We created a new website, and I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat, called Keep Teaching. You're going to see that a lot from a lot of different places around the UNC system and a lot of universities. So we asked them to start with a continuity plan. It sounds vaguely familiar to what was talked about earlier about a digital crosswalk. We really wanted faculty to think about what their pedagogical needs were first, and what are some of the different ways that they teach, and then helping to match those with different technology that fits that. So if they had large discussion courses, what are tools that help facilitate discussions? And what are some of those different options, either in our LMS or through our synchronous tools? Once we've gone through the planning process, then we started doing more specific webinars about those tools. We at one point had a variety of tools available and a lot of different workshops, and we've decided that this is a different audience than who we've really normally done professional development with before, and we needed to focus on our core tools. So the core tools that we've been focusing on have been Moodle, which is our learning management system, as well as Zoom, which is what we're using for synchronous learning. And what we're trying to do is really focus on, right now, faculty getting content up. So what are the different ways that they can get their content online, as well as what are the different ways they can make sure that it's accessible. That's been a really big effort on our parts as well. And I heard Mark talk a little bit earlier about using your accessibility checkers to make sure that that's happening. Then we've been focusing on Zoom for some that want to do synchronous sessions. We're also focusing on Zoom for some of the recording options that we have, because we do have a lot of faculty that are wanting to record their lectures and then have those available offline for students to be able to download and use. From our standpoint, we're doing a series of those workshops that are coming up. All of them are online in our synchronous learning management system. And then we're also doing instructional consultations and office hours to try to help faculty that have not gone through this process. We're also trying to push out to each of our individual colleges and reach out to them. Been very impressed with the way that teachers have been sharing their resources with others and trying to figure out a really good way to maximize that, so that when we have one faculty member that has a quiz bank with 3,000 questions in it, how do we share that with somebody else that might teach the same subject to be able to use those resources? Our phase 2 approach will look more at assessments and what are some different ways that we can work into those different things. But for our primary focus right now has been on content and doing that continuity. And also that has a lot to do with the fact that we're not sure when this will end. And so really taking that in phases. We're also creating a series of websites that will also include screencasts as well as printable things that people will be able to print out, either one-pagers or detailed instructions, and then trying to balance that with what does our vendor have versus what are some things that are very specific to the way that we have things set up. For instance, sometimes login information or the way that you log in to things is very specific for your institution, and making sure that that makes sense and using all of our efforts towards what's specific to us and then linking to vendor videos or vendor resources as needed.
Thank you.
I think that's, oh yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I said I think that's the main things I wanted to talk about. Is there anything else, Mark?
No, that's great. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me today.
So I think it's interesting to know that, across all dynamics of education, we're having the same thoughts. And, just as we have teachers, we're working on preparing and getting ready for what remote instruction might look like. We're doing that at the UNC system as well. I wanted to share with you a resource, and this is also on the website. This is by Dr. Tori Truss, and what's some quick tips for teachers on when you're preparing to teach remotely in times of need. I won't go through that, but that's there for you, but it is a real quick guidance as you try to think about shifting your pedagogy. Also want to bring to your attention, as a result of this, PBS is putting on a training for teachers on March 18th at 7 p.m. It's you can register through Evite, and this is a way to help teachers learn how to reach children through various activities remotely. Again, we've looked at NCVPS for core instruction, and I know many of you are looking at this for supplemental instruction, and this will be a good go-to as you look at ways to engage children and get your teachers thinking innovatively to do that. And then one other thing we've got to talk about today is the backbone most of the time of remote learning is our learning management systems. And the first one we want to talk about is the state adopted learning management system, Canvas. We have linked some resources here for tools to get you started. One thing that I'd like all of you to know is Instructure, who owns Canvas, any current customer through July 1, they are going to give you all the licenses you need to cover your entire district if you do shift to an LMS at this time.
And then also relative to Google Classroom, which is one that a lot of other schools are using, is making sure there's a teacher center for teachers to get started with Google Classroom. One of the recommendations that we have is using tools that teachers are already familiar with. So if you're not using one of these two tools, that you may want to stick with what teachers are already using until they get comfortable delivering instruction remotely if needed, and then transitioning to one of these down the road as it's appropriate.
And then I want to remind you of some tools that is available to every educator and student through the HomeBased Portal that's provided for the whole state. So SchoolNet is there. Inside of SchoolNet, you have many resources with assessments and lessons that will convert text to speech, will allow extended time, can contrast your screen, and there's many playlists there to personalize your learning. It is all tied back to many topics that you might want to pick from and choose. And then everything in there is printable and downloadable as well if you're starting to look at packets that you might send home.
All right, so in your libraries, so many schools are looking at establishing more flexible lending practices at this time, including extending the number of simultaneous checkouts, extending due dates, and then maximizing utilization of the school library ebooks that are within your public school unit already. Partnering with local libraries to get students library cards, which gives them the ability to check out books from the library, but also gives them subscription to NC Live, which includes ebooks, journals, video, test prep, etc. And then also the state learning library, or the state library, has the NC Kids Digital Library, which has a variety of ebooks available to them as well.
And another resource is the NCwiseowl, and this is a resource that's been around. We have just recently, in the last 2 months, given this a major facelift, and this major facelift makes it much more easy to navigate. I am not off the mark if I say there are millions of books here, because there are. I know that sounds like a lot, but there are millions of books already in here. These are ebooks that you can use for fiction, nonfiction, and general reference. There's content that you can download, and I want you to make sure that you have talked to your person of contact there, so you are sending home the passwords to get in off campus. That'll be something you want to put in your kit. That this is here and it's available, and there's content in there K through 13. So many things that you can look at with those resources that's available to everyone across the state.
So as we alluded to earlier, with the shift to potential remote learning and the number of online tools that are available, the need to be strategic about the tools that are being introduced, right? That you're having people at the table and having conversations about, with your curriculum folks, with your CTE folks, about what tools they're using and how they're using them. Making sure that teachers are aware of the tools that many districts are already paying for that teachers may not know about, or that the state is already paying for that teachers may not know about, and making sure that that inventory is done and distributed to teachers and they have that information. As we need new tools, establishing a process for vetting them and looking at instructional quality in the tools, but also looking at very heavily at student data privacy and what happens to student data. And as some vendors are giving their tools away for free, make sure that teachers know which tools that they can and can't use. If there's an issue with a tool, especially with the quality of a tool or data privacy issues in the tool, make sure teachers are aware of that so that they can know which tools are safe and not safe. Free tools still need to be vetted, and it's very important that we vet free tools the same way we vet tools that we're paying for. And then reviewing what happens to the data in these tools when the free trial stops being free, right? Does that data go away? Do you have to start paying for the tool to maintain access, and making sure that you understand the long-term implications of using some of these tools while they're free right now?
Yes, and again, make sure you're talking to everyone. Talk to CTE, talk to AIG, talk to all those folks to make sure you're on the same page and everyone is in consensus about what you will be doing. So we've put together a list of instructional resources. Again, this is on the website, and we've structured it around what they track back to. So there's many, many out there. And if you've also looked online, social media, as a result, has many things that's coming out as well. And so education companies, as we've talked to, are offering many free resources. And courtesy of Amazing Educational Resources, they have put those together on a spreadsheet that we have linked here for you as well. And we will keep that updated as more announcements are coming out, but I know you have heard of many of those, but as they put out free educational resources, we will keep tracking that and updating this spreadsheet for you.
Another place to go look for resources is GoOpenNC, which is North Carolina's open education resources learning objects repository. And they've got content in there for all grade levels and subject areas. The other thing that GoOpenNC can be used for is as a learning resources hub. It's a place for schools and subject areas to come together and collaborate and share resources and discuss content and pedagogy and communicate and collaborate in a collaborative space designed for the sharing of learning objects.
And so yesterday, inside of GoOpenNC, we created a remote learning hub, And so that is a place where educators can go by grade level and topic level and connect with each other about what they're doing. So a PLC format put in place and ready to collaborate.
All right, so now we need to talk a little bit about mobile devices and the devices that students are going to use to access the internet, and some statistics that we have that we know that we have to address in a transition to remote learning. The first one being that we don't have accurate data on device or internet needs for school staff. We have better pictures for school students, but we don't know how many teachers don't have internet access at home, and we don't know how many teachers may not have access to a device at home. We do know that 32% of schools don't have enough computers for every student. We know that 70% of schools do not have a one-to-one program that covers all grade levels. We know that 80% of schools do not currently have programs in place to send devices home. About half of schools don't have accommodations for students without internet. 11% of schools are not using a learning management system, and 18% of schools report that 50% or more of their students don't have internet access at home. So if you're trying to, so many schools are working at, if they're going remote learning, they're going to work on pulling apart their device carts and sending the devices on carts home. So what we've put together here is a policy resource guide for districts to adopt policies relative to one-to-one and sending device home. So if you need to get that done in a hurry, there are policies already there that you can adapt to your district and adopt. The second thing is establishing your norms for tech support and how you're going to do remote tech support for devices. Whether you're going to, if you're using Zoom, Zoom has remote support capabilities. Some of the other tools do as well. But how you're going to be able to remotely troubleshoot issues that occur. And then filtering devices from home. If you're not using a filter that can filter devices from home, you can contact Diane Dunlap at MCNC, and they can get an instance of Zscaler stood up for you for free, and they can copy it from another district, so there's a pretty low barrier to entry, and then you can filter devices from home.
So as we wrap up, we wanted to share with you just a couple of additional resources. There are many other states and school districts doing exactly what we're doing at this time. We have found some high quality ones that we wanted to share with you so you can look at their resources they have as well. And we've linked those here for you. But again, as we wrap this up, I want to show you the website that we have in place with all these resources captured in one spot. We thank you so much for your attendance today. Again, we will look at your questions and get answers to those, and we hope this has been valuable to you.
Thank you.